Hello, my name is Alice, and I'm currently 45 years old. I live with my husband, our daughter, and unfortunately with my husband's mother and sister as well. It's hard to say we live happily. I work from home, but peace is scarce in this house. The ongoing tension stems from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law Jessica, who have shown nothing but disdain and neglect towards me for over a decade. As my daughter Glory grew older, their behavior bothered me less, but the discord was always there. I initially started my career as an astrologer, but as my blog gained popularity, I shifted towards becoming a life coach, specializing in customer attraction, which aligns with my current profession. I met my husband Willie during my training as an astrologer, introduced by a friend. Willie, who was working in sales at a medicinal company and dabbling in affiliate marketing, offered me invaluable advice on customer engagement. Attracted by his kindness and support, we started dating and married within a year, despite our modest beginnings. Willie has always been my rock. I'm incredibly grateful to have married him. Our arrangement to live with my in-laws started about a year after our wedding. It was a sudden decision prompted by the unexpected death of my father-in-law. Feeling uncertain about her future, my mother-in-law asked if she could move in with us. In return for her help with household chores, we agreed. At first, my mother-in-law seemed delighted with our new living arrangement. I was optimistic that we would build a good relationship. However, just 3 months later, the atmosphere changed. She began to ignore me, possibly upset that I wasn't helping enough with the housework. Soon, my sister-in-law Jessica also started to exclude me. Being ignored wasn't the worst part. The real challenge was my mother-in-law's tendency to complain to others. She didn't just vent to Jessica. She told neighbors and relatives that I claimed to work from home, but left all the housework to her. If I ever responded, she claimed I was overly confrontational, so she chose to simply ignore me. To complicate matters, she advised others to avoid talking to me, claiming it would be troublesome. This led to many giving me only lukewarm responses or outright ignoring my greetings. I felt increasingly isolated, and despite my pleas for her to stop spreading these unfounded rumors, my words fell on deaf ears. There was a slight softening in her attitude when my daughter Glory was born, 3 years after we started living together. Although her overall demeanor towards me barely shifted, she was very fond of Glory, and her assistance with household duties and childcare was genuinely helpful, especially as my workload increased. Around the same time, Willie's side business in affiliate marketing began to falter, and he struggled to adapt to the changing market. Willie approached me one day, asking if I could contribute a bit more to our monthly expenses. I reassured him that my consulting business was doing well, thanks to some new strategies I had implemented. Despite my openness to collaborate on boosting his sales, Willie preferred to handle it independently. He said, "I'll try it on my own? I'm really sorry." From the onset of our marriage, we had agreed that Willie would manage our finances. Initially, my income was modest, but as it grew, so did my willingness to support our family further. Willie was always a bit hesitant about involving me financially, but as my consulting sales improved, he became more open to accepting my contributions. Initially, I could only spare $200 monthly, but as my earnings grew, I was able to increase my contributions, sometimes even up to $2,000, although this wasn't consistent every month. I had the option to give more by dipping into our savings, but I was cautious not to overextend our finances. Willie struggled with his side business, and his pride often kept him from seeking my advice. He started spending more evenings out, often at cafes, coming home later each night. Around the time our daughter Glory was 6 years old, Jessica, my sister-in-law, got married and moved out. Although she didn't move far and often visited, bringing her young son Eric to our house. When Eric turned 1, Jessica decided to start working part-time. My mother-in-law enthusiastically offered to watch Eric until the evenings, which Jessica gratefully accepted. However, as my mother-in-law grew more attached to her grandson Eric, she started treating Glory less warmly. Whenever the children quarreled, she was quick to scold Glory, often unfavorably comparing her to Eric. Glory, feeling the unfair treatment, began to stay close to me and grew resentful of her grandmother's behavior. I felt compelled to speak up, urging my mother-in-law to treat both grandchildren equally, reminding her that Glory was now a big sister and in elementary school. Despite these family tensions, my professional life was thriving. My blog and consulting services were attracting more clients, and I was making significantly more than during my days as an astrologer. When Willie came to me, expressing concern over his company's financial health and hinting at possible missed bonuses, he asked if I could contribute even more to our expenses. I was already providing $3,000 monthly, and his request made me reflect on our financial dynamics. Willie admitted that his income had decreased and that his side business was failing. He felt ashamed, but I reassured him, emphasizing that as a couple, we should support each other through tough times. My contributions continued to increase, eventually reaching $5,000 a month. Despite this, I respected Willie's desire to manage our household finances, careful not to bruise his pride. However, when Glory entered 7th grade, Jessica unexpectedly returned home with Eric, following a divorce sparked by her infidelity. This added a new layer of complexity to our already strained family dynamics. At this point, Glory had grown up enough to help with household chores, so the responsibilities were distributed among each of us. My mother-in-law and Jessica's continued disregard for me no longer affected me as much. However, it was disheartening that Glory couldn't have her room when she started middle school because Jessica's return had filled all available spaces in our home. One evening, while discussing which tutoring school Glory should attend for middle school, Jessica interjected abruptly, "Tutoring is expensive. Why doesn't Glory just study on her own?" I responded firmly, "I'm covering the cost of the tutoring, so it isn't any of your concern." Jessica scoffed. "What, you're paying? Impossible. You don't earn anything. Willie said he's the one supporting you. You're just a leech, aren't you? Ha ha ha. You married him for his money, right?" Willie, trying to maintain peace, intervened. "Don't speak ill of Alice. It's unwarranted." But Jessica retorted, "That's just shameless." Her words filled my mind with doubts and questions. What exactly had Willie been telling his family about our financial situation? Had he portrayed himself as the sole provider? Jessica's insinuations continued. "It's about time we ended this parasite lifestyle. I feel bad for Glory, but if we pay for her tutoring, we won't be able to afford my compensation." "Are you saying our household funds are covering your compensation?" I asked, puzzled. "Willie said he would handle it. You should be using your own money for Eric." As the conversation unfolded, I began to grasp the depth of the deception. I had always thought that my mother-in-law and the rest of the family knew about my financial contributions, as Willie had been managing our finances. However, it appeared that Willie had let everyone believe that he was shouldering all the financial responsibilities, including Jessica's living expenses and her compensation. My mother-in-law snapped, "Be quiet. It's only natural for a family. You're the outsider here, not related by blood, and yet you act as if living here is your right. It makes me angry. What you contribute is barely enough to cover your food expenses. You hardly have any income, and yet you're so arrogant." Feeling my body tremble with anger, I saw Glory out of the corner of my eye, her expression one of distress. I had always known Willie took pride in being the provider, but I hadn't realized the extent to which this pride had influenced our family dynamics. While it was true that Willie initially handled the living expenses and pocket money for my mother-in-law and Jessica, over time my income had increased significantly. We were now largely living off my earnings, though it seemed nobody in the household was aware of this. I knew it was crucial to have a serious conversation with Willie about our financial situation. He returned home around midnight, visibly drunk but in a jovial mood. Seizing the moment, I asked, "Can we talk? I didn't know you weren't getting any money from your mother or Jessica. They seem to think you're covering all our household expenses." With a sheepish grin, Willie replied, "About that, my bad. It's a matter of pride for me as a man. When we first started living together, I was the one paying for everything. There never seemed to be a right moment to clarify that you were also contributing, especially in front of the family. Let me play the role of the responsible eldest son, please." His tone was lighthearted, almost like he was acting out a scene from a comedy sketch. "Oh, and by the way," Willie added as he clasped his hands together in a mock-serious gesture, "I'm heading out this Saturday for a seminar in Conan. I've been invited by a friend who I'm doing a side business with. I'm going to make it a success, so cheer for me, Alice. Well, I'm off to sleep. See you tomorrow." With that, he laid down on the mat, still in high spirits, and quickly fell into a deep, snoring sleep. Despite his cheerful demeanor, my frustration didn't fade. Willie's late nights had become more frequent, and we hadn't had a proper discussion in a long time. His drunken admission seemed almost like a joke, but come the weekend, Willie truly did leave with a large suitcase. In Willie's absence, I decided it was a good time to take Glory back to my parents' house for a change of scenery. However, upon our return, we were met with a shocking sight. Piles of trash bags were stacked in front of our entrance. Upon closer inspection, it was horrifying to discover that these bags contained mine and Glory's belongings, tossed together as if they were mere garbage. "What is this? Why is this happening?" I exclaimed, bewildered and upset. Glory, in tears, pulled her beloved stuffed animal from one of the bags and hugged it tightly. Angry and confused, I approached the front door, only to find that the locks had been changed while we were away. It was clear that this was the doing of my mother-in-law and Jessica. I rang the doorbell and knocked several times, but there was no response. Peering into another bag, I found a note that read, "Parasites disappear, never come back." A surge of anger welled up within me. "The real parasites are you," I shouted, unable to contain my fury. This was the most hurtful and disrespectful treatment I had ever received from my in-laws in all 13 years, and the fact that they made my daughter suffer in this way was utterly unbearable. My patience finally shattered under the weight of mounting anger. I hastily packed our belongings into the car and drove back to my parents' house, vowing never to return to my in-laws. "I'm curious to see how the parasites manage without their host," I muttered, frustrated and hurt. Upon our arrival, my parents were taken aback by the situation. I hadn't shared the full extent of the neglect and financial issues orchestrated by my in-laws, nor their disdainful treatment towards Glory. I didn't want to cause them unnecessary worry. Yet, seeing the condition we were in, they were visibly upset. "You don't have to go back there. You should seek compensation," they insisted, their voices thick with anger. My mother's empathetic words, "You really had it tough," brought me to tears. For so long, I had been struggling silently, but no more. Resolved to face my feelings head-on while at my parents' home, I reached out to a friend who had introduced me to Willie. She was well connected with Willie's business circle. "How are you? I need to ask something. Do you know if Willie's friends are at that big entrepreneur seminar in Conan?" I inquired. She replied, "I was invited but declined. Willie didn't go, did he?" She casually mentioned hearing that Willie had quit his job and was now running a business with his wife. "You two must be close," she added. I managed a nonchalant response and quickly ended the call. Prompted by this conversation, I contacted Willie's company only to discover that he had indeed quit his job 3 years ago. This revelation meant I had been solely covering nearly all our living expenses without knowing the full extent of our financial situation. Reflecting on these discoveries left me feeling empty. A week later, Willie messaged me, casually mentioning he was back in the U.S. After a period of ignoring him, I ceased hearing from him altogether until I assumed he got wind of what had happened at home. Expecting him to reach out persistently, I hired a detective to delve deeper into his activities. The investigation painted a troubling picture. Willie, dressed impeccably in the mornings, spent his afternoons gambling and his evenings at another woman's house. This prompted me to also investigate his possible infidelity. 2 weeks later, Willie called, his voice laced with panic, likely timed with what would have been his former company's payday. "Alice, I'm sorry I haven't been in touch. I'm sorry for what my family did. I heard they kicked you out, and I've been trying to understand why it all happened." He hurriedly shifted the topic and then made a startling proposal. "Let's leave that house and start anew, just the three of us. I'm ready to cut ties with anyone who has mistreated you, including my mother and Jessica. Please come back." "Are you prepared to cut ties with your mother and Jessica?" I questioned, skeptical of his sudden decision to abandon them after making them dependent on him for so long. Disappointed in Willie's self-centered actions, I struggled to reconcile the man I married with the one who now seemed so willing to discard his own family so easily. Resolute and prepared for confrontation, I messaged Willie, "I'm coming back, leave the door unlocked." His response seemed hesitant, but a few days later, I returned to the in-laws' house with Glory in tow. Willie was there, along with his mother and Jessica. Thankfully, Eric was not present to witness the tense adult exchanges. As soon as we entered, I could feel the tension. Willie tried to engage, but I ignored his attempts and instead pulled out a divorce form from my bag. Facing Willie squarely, I confronted him. "I heard you quit your job without telling me. Since we're supposedly managing a business together, does that mean the $5,000 I've been transferring every month was covering your salary?" Willie fumbled for an excuse. "No, that's not it. I told you the business was in trouble, so I decided to quit before getting fired." "But you quit 3 years ago, didn't you?" I pressed on. "I called your company and it's still up and running, not bankrupt as you implied." Willie's discomfort was palpable. He began to sweat under the scrutiny. "And what exactly is your role in our so-called joint business management? Are you the accountant?" His evasion continued as I turned to his mother. "Willie is supporting the whole family, isn't he? He quit his job, his side business isn't doing well, and yet it's a mystery where the money is coming from." "I'm leaving, but please continue to get financial support from Willie," I stated dryly. The color drained from my mother-in-law and Jessica's faces. "Just the other day on the phone, Willie, you were crying, begging to save only yourself, saying you'd cut ties with your mother and sister. But that's not going to happen. I'm also discarding Willie here." Willie tried to intervene. "What do you mean? I haven't been going to work. That's a lie. I live in a suit every morning. It's true. Alice has been covering all expenses for years. I'm unemployed now and not doing any side business. We're going to have a hard life because you guys kicked Alice out. We could have had an easy life without working if you hadn't done anything unnecessary," I declared. As the commotion escalated among Willie, his mother, and Jessica, Glory and I began to collect our things. I retrieved a recently purchased cleaning robot, an expensive microwave my mother-in-law favored, and a beauty device gifted to Jessica by Willie. "This is mine since I bought it with my money, or you can pay me back for it," I stated firmly as Jessica fell silent at my assertion. Then I searched their rooms for my expensive brand bags and accessories, which were conspicuously missing from the items they had earlier put out as trash. "Why are you taking that too?" they protested. "This is mine," I replied, dismissing their complaints and ignoring their attempts to sweet-talk their way out of the situation. Finally, I dropped one last revelation. "Oh, I forgot to mention. I plan to claim compensation from your mistress Amy. Tell her it's no use running away." Willie's face turned white. "How do you know about her?" His shock was evident, marking the unraveling of the facade he had maintained for so long. Upon confronting Willie, I firmly stated, "I know you went to Conan with Amy recently. Good for you, right? Of course I have all the evidence of the affair, so there's no escaping that. You've been deceiving me and having fun for the past 3 years. I'll be claiming compensation for the affair, child support for Glory, and, oh, the compensation you were secretly paying Jessica. I'll be claiming that back as well." As I prepared to leave, my mother-in-law and Jessica made a desperate attempt to stop me. I was wrong, Alice. I'm sorry. We just believed what Willie said. We can't live without you. We'll do anything. Please help us, my mother-in-law pleaded. Jessica added, I can't pay you back for the compensation. I'm sorry too. I apologize for everything. You'll forgive us, right? I couldn't help but laugh at their desperate expressions, finally realizing who had been truly supporting their lifestyle. It dawned on them too late that their non-blood-related support was leaving. Let's just ignore these people, Mom. Let's go home, I said to Glory. Yes, that's right, Willie. You'll be hearing from my lawyer soon. Please take care of it, I stated coldly, leaving a dejected Willie behind as we returned home with the items we had collected. Later, my divorce from Willie was finalized through a lawyer and I demanded compensation. My mother-in-law and Jessica sent numerous apologies and pleas for reconciliation, but I ignored them all. Surprisingly, there was still some inheritance left from Willie's father. The fact that they had been living off my money without using their resources infuriated me again. However, the inheritance wasn't enough to cover the compensation, and ultimately they had to sell the house to make a lump sum payment. This included the compensation I had been paying for Jessica. I don't know what became of Willie's family afterward. I hope Willie can take care of his family, but ultimately, he will choose his path. I also claimed compensation from Willie's mistress, which led to an unexpected revelation. Through the lawyer, I informed her that Willie was unemployed and I had been supporting the family. Willie had deceived her, claiming he was a successful entrepreneur. They broke up after an argument. Glory and I moved to an apartment, and I was finally able to give her the room she had longed for. Reflecting on the past 13 years, I don't think they were wasted, but sometimes I wonder if I should have made a decision sooner when I started being ignored. Now I feel happy that my home is a peaceful place, free from the turmoil of the past.